Hello everybody, welcome to Build or Buy. We're ready now to take our Threadripper 3 TRX40 chipset motherboard, install it in the XL-ATX case. This ought to be exciting. Come join us. This is the Corsair 750D Airflow. Okay, we've got our case up. We've got a fan here in the back we need to take off. It has to come off anyway. These are 3-pin stock fans on the front and in the back. Those have to come out. We're replacing them with the Noctua 4-pin fans, the black, 3000 RPM, but they'll be controlled by the thermistors on the motherboard. We also have 2 drive bay racks in here. We need to get those out to make it easier to get the motherboard in. So, fan first. Fan is out. I save these, but I don't use them. Somebody else might want to use them sometime, or I might need them someplace else, but I always save them. Now we got a drive cage to remove. Right here. Screws on the bottom. Drive cage is out. Parts box for the screws we're going to need. The motherboard standoffs are already mounted. Centering screw, wiring harness needs to be moved so that it will not be in our way. Okay, centering screw, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have all of our screws, we're ready to go. I think now we're ready to get the motherboard set in the case. Wiring harness is out of the way. Now the plastic is on the back of this board. We're going to take that off before we go any further. That too is something new. I don't remember them doing that. So as we go in, we get to the centering motherboard panel I/O. Make sure those cables are clear. And I'm feeling for the centering pin, which would be right here. If you notice my red dot, be right in there. I'm on it. Now what we want to do is tilt this up and zoom this in. I'll put the red dot on it. That's the centering pin right there when you know that motherboard's in the right spot. It looks like a standoff, but it stands up taller than the other standoffs. And you cannot put a screw in it. That's the centering pin. Hope that helps. So now we have the motherboard centered, so all we need to do is find the right screws that go in those standoffs and hook that down. So we'll go to our little box of parts that came with the motherboard, find the right screws. And I've got to get a PC speaker and put in here too. I usually buy those like 10 at a time. I just like to hear when that motherboard boots up, I want to hear that report. Okay, I think I got the right screws. Start at the top. Yep, right threads. Go to one here at the bottom. There should be one. There's one right under there. Okay, that's a first. So I'll take that cover off. We got to get 2 screws in the motherboard right here, and we got a screw right there to do. Never had to go to that much trouble to find the standoffs. They've always been exposed. I should have made note of that when we were installing the motherboard and inventorying parts. Okay, so I've got 2. That makes number 3. And I'm not putting these down tight. I'm just getting the screws started. I will come back and drive them home, meaning all the way in as soon as we get all of them secured. I want to make sure they all line up. But it's interesting, I had to take the cover off to get to these 2 screws over here. I should have made note of that when I had that off the first time. This is our first Threadripper 3 that we've actually physically touched to build, but technically it's our second Threadripper 3. The first one we built with Tony. I helped him, texting him one night when Mom was in the hospital on the phone. What he needed to do, the steps, procedures, and all that. Kept my mind occupied. Helped Tony and helped me. Therapeutic. Okay, we've got a screw up front. One right up here. There should be another one. Okay, there's not. Okay, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 screws. All right. Now, as we look at the motherboard and adjust to make sure everything's centered, we get an idea of how this all works. And it's interesting to note this XL-ATX is just slightly larger than ATX, but I like the way everything lines up with this. It's perfect. It's beautiful. The holes that go through the board for the cables, power supply, the notch on the top to pass cables through for the power supply. Good layout. And the way the I/O panel lines up, that's all good. I thought it was a little weird when we first started building computers that we didn't have an I/O panel to pop in and out. I think that was probably with the X399. I don't remember if it was with the Ryzen. I just don't remember. Been too long. So we'll get these secured now. Now, I hope with what you're learning and what we're doing, it'll help you to build a Threadripper 3. If you've never built a computer, it's not that hard. Just pay attention, stay safe, and watch what you're doing. It's a pretty simple to follow procedure. I hope that what we're doing is going to help you so you can be successful, because that's our goal. If you're successful, that makes us all successful. We're here to help each other. So let's check our screws. 1, we got 2, 3, 4, standoff in the middle, 5, 6, 7. So 7 screws, all set. So this is all good to go. The next thing we need to do now is get a power supply in. Now the power supply we started with was an EVGA. When we started with that, we didn't know EVGA had changed manufacturer. When we learned that, we got a different power supply. We didn't get the power supply that was our first choice. We got the power supply that was our second choice. And we didn't get the size we wanted. We got what was available. We're using a Superflower power supply. So this will be another unboxing. Our first choice was a Seasonic, but at the time, we couldn't get our hands on a Seasonic. Oh, that's the EVGA. Okay, that was the first power supply we were going to install. But instead, we're going to use the Superflower. I just got to find it. Alrighty, here's the Superflower. We were going to install an EVGA G3 1000 watt, but instead, we're going to install a Superflower 1300 watt. It's bigger than what we'd planned, but it's what was available. So you do what you got to do. I'm just saying. It's interesting the way they shipped this. Didn't even bother to put this in a box. They just put a label on it, sent it. And for what it's worth, the EGA was gold. This Superflower is also gold. The more efficient power supplies are what you want to use because you're not wasting wattage. You're only using what you need. Usually the more efficient power supplies cost more because they're more efficient, but they're of a higher quality because they also have a longer warranty on them. Superflower. Before we get the power supply out, I'm going to put this heatsink back on. It's easier to do now. Heatsink's installed. Now for the power supply. Superflower 1300 watt. Is this overkill? Absolutely. Again, it's about what we could get. Availability. Comes in a nice little bag. Oh wow. Fully modular. We always recommend fully modular. Now, I don't put the case with the power supply facing down with a fan blowing out through the bottom. I always put it with the fan blowing in. For those that like to do it that way, I understand. I got my reasons too. Even though the case may be sitting on the shelf, I prefer that coming in and going up and out. Down through the bottom is just too tight for me. I don't like to depend on the bottom for cooling. Bag of cables and the thumb screws to secure the power supply with. And for those wondering, asking the question, how much power supply do I really need? Typically, any place you buy your parts from will have a power supply calculator. For example, if you use even like PC Part Picker, it'll give you some idea of what size capacity you need. Our suggestion would be get bigger than what you need in case you need to upgrade or add stuff to it, because you've got that threshold you got to meet when everything has that surge when it comes on. Once it settles down, it uses a whole lot less wattage. So you can use anybody's calculator. For a rough estimate, I would say like an 850 watt would be adequate for something like this. But this, yeah, it is what it is. As they say, go big or go home. So we got our power supply setting in. Well, that's what I like about this case. Everything just fits easy. This case just has a nice feel to it. I like the price of it too. After looking at those other cases we looked at, man, to each his own. So we're going to get this power supply secured. Now this power supply has a switch on it for auto or echo. We're going to leave it in auto mode. I do not want economy on here. This is not an economy computer. Got to get the power supply secured to the case. Can't have that rattling around. That sucker's heavy. Now we'll put links up to all these parts in the videos, so if you want to build your Threadripper 3 like this one, you'll know what's going on. And this Gigabyte motherboard with a TRX40 chipset, the Designare, way to go. Those may be thumb screws, but I had to use a screwdriver to get them going. That was crazy. Okay, we may have some other components here. Let's see what's in this bag. I've been busy. Oh, I wonder where that was. Originally, we were going to put in a 2 terabyte Seagate NVMe drive for the boot drive. But then when we got wind of the Sabrent 4 terabyte, then we'd already had this too long, but we'll find a use for it. This might be the secondary drive that goes on the motherboard, or this could end up being a drive that goes on the quad card. Stay tuned. Okay, so that's an extra drive. We'll set that aside. Wonder where that drive was. Now I know. Okay, let's see. We've got to plug in our cables for the power supply. Power supply is installed. Now we need to get out our bag of cables and hook stuff up. And then we'll be ready for the smoke test. Now, I'm not going to do a neat installation of these cables. This is all about getting this system up and running and checking it. I will do that later. So for those of you that have a fit about the unneatness of this, get over it. First you build it and you make sure it works. Then you can go back and make it look pretty. Okay. Oh, I like these cables they use. Okay, primary cable for the power supply. So primary cable, set that right there. I'm looking for the extra taps for the CPU. There's one, 8-pin, and I need two 8-pin. It's got a blue and a clear connector on it. I like the fact they're color-coded. This goes a whole lot faster. So there's my 3 power cables. So what we're going to need to do is stand this up so we can see the back side while we start routing cables. But what I'll do is start with the one that goes on the power supply, route it through and come around. So when I stand this up, we'll see if we can get another view on the camera so you can see what I'm doing. So that'll take care of the power supply to the motherboard. Then as far as any I/O devices, we don't have to worry about that. So those cables we'll take care of later. We'll have to have 2 out for the video card. I'm eager to see what video card we're going to use. How about you guys? Been saving that. So we're going to need 2 of those. PCI Express, which will be red, and another one. PCI Express SLI ready. That gives me 2 of those. We'll keep those out. And we have enough cables in here for 2 video cards. Plenty of SATA cables. We don't need those right now either. And this is what I like too also. We've got a heavy-duty power supply that includes a heavy-duty cable. So I like that. So we're going to need to stand this up so we can do some work. So I will start as we look for the layout. So this power supply is modular type 4. So I'm going to start with the connectors in here that go on here. And we'll start right down here for the motherboard. You can see that right there. Those 2. So that goes in the very bottom. Pretty much bulletproof. Okay, those 2 are connected. That'll be for the 20-pin. Now for the other 2, they go to the CPU, which will be the 8-pin. This is our first Superflower power supply we've installed, and we're putting it on the highest end motherboard we got. Seasonic's pretty easy to figure out. It's kind of like the EVGA. I like the color coding on this, but I'd like some better documentation on how this plugs into the power supply. Okay, so we've got the 2 bottom ones here plugged in. That's for the motherboard 20 plus 4. And then the next one would be the CPU, which would be 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. These are universal. As we look at this, these 2 are specific to the motherboard, but all these others are universal. So it doesn't matter. Wow. It says 11 universal. Those 2 are specific. And that's the one that gets the multi-pin connector. I had to know that. Power supplies always specify how those cables hook up. So I didn't notice it, but I thought, well, I'll take it back out and look. And there wasn't anything there to notice. So now that I know they're universal, okay. Okay, so now power supply is secure. We have the primary lead. I'm going to go ahead and get these other 2 leads set that go for the motherboard. So when we tilt this up and take the back off, we can get these cables run. It says the leads are universal, so okay. New wrinkle on my horn. And the 2 that go to the top, we'll plug them in on top, right next to each other. Okay. Okay, for the power supply, these leads need to go through, route it around, and route it up and over. So we're going to need to take the case and stand it up, take the back off, and turn it around. While we are at this point, we could go ahead and hook up the I/O cables to make that all like it needs to be. But again, we're going to have the case standing up so that we can route all that stuff out around the back and out of the way. So next step, we need to stand it up and get the back off. So from here, pull that back off. That's the largest one. We'll take that one out. Those will go to the top. Both of them are 8-pin. One is 8-pin blue, and the other one that is adjustable for 2 4s. We need to put those together in the correct order so that we can clamp them together and do the second 8-pin, 4 and 4. Those are now tied in. So those cables will get a nice placement. And then the large 24-pin will come in up and over, and it's got a piece to be put together, clamped and connected. Okay, those are all clipped in. All right, and those we will tie down when we get to that point. Okay, now I'm going to lay this back down so we can work on the cables that go on the inside. But what I want to do is get them routed so that they're not up here in the way. All these should go in the bottom. So let's see if we can route them down here. I think we got everything. See, that's what I like about this case. It's an easy case to work on. I haven't had to flip it yet. Yeah, I think that'll give me enough leads. Okay, I've got one USB-C. Yep, okay. One USB-C. I think that'll do. And then 2 USB 2 headers. Okay, so one USB 2 header, 2 USB 2 ports on the front. The other header's still open. This other cable is for HD audio, and that goes all the way over here. So with what we've got left, we've got our fans we got to take care of. Those front fans have to come out. Rear fan has to be put on. We still have that to do. So let's, while we've got it up, let's go ahead and get our rear fan put on. So this is one of the Noctua fans, the black industrial fans, run at 3,000 RPM. They will be controlled by the thermistor. Comes with a fan, screws. Of course, we'll use the screws that came with the case. We just need to watch the direction of airflow. Should be toward the label so the label will face to the back. And I'll be sure the cable goes where it's the easiest for me. So we can lay that down and get this installed. So put the lead this way. Yep, we got a connector right there. So that's a system fan. Okay, so we'll plug in this rear fan to this header right here. And of course, there's no way to pull that motherboard in and out without taking that fan out. You have to. These Noctua fans are nice because they have the little rubber mounts on them, so when you put the screws to them, they won't vibrate. I've had some fans where after you put the screws to them, they vibrate. Then you have to buy separate mounts to isolate them and shock mount them, but I really like this. Okay, rear fan is installed, and that extra cable can be out here, out of the way. Now we need to set the cables to the motherboard for the front I/O panel, and then we'll swap out the two front fans. Now we're going to do the I/O panel cables. Okay, I/O panel cables, we've got them all gathered up. Should have everything here in front of us. Reset switch, power LED, hard drive LED, and then the power LED. Okay, we're going to take a look at the manual. Okay, this shows us the configuration accordingly. Power LED, reset switch, and hard drive activity. So I'll start with the bottom left-hand corner hard drive activity light. So the bottom left-hand corner, hard drive activity light. And the one right next to it would be the reset switch. We don't have. Oh yeah, we do, reset switch. So let's find the reset button, reset switch. So here's the reset switch. It goes right next to it. Reset switch is done. Then the next one would be the power LED top left or the power LED bottom right. And then we have to have a PC speaker on top. So we have two leads and we have a reset switch. We have a power switch. So the power switch will go second from the right, and that should be positive on the left. So I'm looking at the leads coming out of the case. Writing power, so positive, which would be the second two. So that's the second two. So these other two will be for power. Power switch or power LED, top left or bottom right. Let's try top left. So the positive will be to the left. So we've got positive here and negative to the right. So let's see if we can put those two in over there and see if that'll do it. If not, then we'll try the other two. Let's see if that'll do what we want. Now, got to have a case speaker. Got that to do. All right, one case speaker coming up. Got a bag of them. We only need one. And the case speaker, that would be top right, positive, red being positive, top left. Okay, case speaker right there. Now, when that reports, we will hear it. So let's see. We've got double check. We've got the primary power, the secondary power for the CPU. We've got our cables plugged into the front. I'm not sure about the power cables. I may need to put those on the bottom ones, which puts the power right below the speaker. I forget which one it likes. For some reason, it tells me I need to be on the bottom right below the speaker, but I'm going to try it the way I've got it and see what we get. So everything else is set. So what we need to do now is put some power to it, and I'll turn it. Oh, we got to have a video card. Who would have thought? Now, which video card are we going to use? Stand by. So now this is going to be an unboxing of the video card we're going to use. Y'all know, if you've watched the previous videos, I'm a big fan of the AMD cards because I think they're good bang for the buck. However, because of the streaming processors, or shall we say the CUDA cores, we're using a different video card this time because this is all about being able to render. So, the video card we're going to be using, this is an EVGA. This is the GeForce RTX 2080 Ti. Pretty cool, huh? Yeah. So, go big or go home. So this is the video card we're going to be using. We got this direct from EVGA. So you want to be sure if you're using an EVGA brand video card to register with EVGA for the extended warranty. And because we bought this when we did, they also gave us a matching trim kit. And while we were at it, there was one other little component we got for the video card. So this also is an unboxing because it came under a separate package. But this is the power link. For those of you who aren't familiar with PowerLink, this allows us to neatly wrap and route those cables around so that they're not seen. So for the neat freaks, we're going the extra yard. Now the matching trim kit and the PowerLink, we're not going to mount now, but you will see it later. But we have it. We need to get the video card out, get it installed, get this thing powered up. So we have a seal to cut. So we'll cut the seal. Wow. Nice card. Well packaged. Dual fans. Installation guide. I've never seen a video card in a presentation box like that. That's different. I guess they had to do something special to justify the cost. They don't give them away. Okay. We're going to take 2 blanks off inside the case. Should probably be these 2 top ones. The very top one will stay, so it'll be number 2 and number 3. Set those aside where I can find them. We're going to have 2 power taps on this, so we'll route that on the power supply once we get this installed. Now, if we were to change the NVMe drive, it'd be a whole lot easier to do it now. But we can do it after the fact using a borescope. Now, this particular card, well, that's beautiful. It's got a piece of plastic on it, so we got to peel that off. Be sure you get all that plastic off of there. Plastic on the memory, plastic on the video card. Goodness, pretty card. And it's got a protector covering the connectors. Okay, our 2 power taps right here. 2 8-pin power taps. This also has the back plane installed on it. So we're going to pull these connector covers off. Set those aside. Okay, let's get this video card installed. Now the connectors on this, we have 2 DisplayPort and 1 HDMI. And down here we have, looks like a USB-C, and right here we have a DisplayPort. So we can plug 4 monitors. 3 of them are DisplayPort and 1 is HDMI. Okay, we are right up against the cooler, right up against it. Video card is down, so now we'll put the screws to it. Okay, now we got 2 power taps to put in for the video card. And these are clear for the power supply end, and red is the end that goes into the video card. So we'll get those put in. And after this, we should be ready for the smoke test. So we will route these from the bottom and across and down. We'll stand it up, route those out, and back in probably right here. Yep, pretty close. And that leaves this connector area right here where my fingers are. That's where we'll take out and route with the SATA cables to there. So much for that. So far so good. Now we need 2 8-pin taps, and we will have 6, 7, 8. Now we could take 2 of those together and do 1 lead, but we're not doing that. We're going to do a separate lead for each one of these power taps to the video card. Okay, that's the first one, and this will be the second one. 2 on the end. Lock that down. There. Make sure our grommet stays in place. And for those that like their neatness, we have our PowerLink cable out, 2 set screws, an Allen wrench, and the PowerLink bracket. So instead of having this, we're going to do this. That is a tiny Allen wrench. So I want to do that to show, because we're going to install the PowerLink to make for a very neat installation of the cable. Now this has a little rubber grommet on each side that we can take off, and there's set screws in there. So if we have to, we could replace one of these connectors with 6-pin connector. We have 2 8-pin connectors installed on here. 8-pin connectors are what we need. And the Allen wrench is for the set screws that are in here to remove that and change it out. So we'll plug this into the video card, then our power taps will go down here at the bottom. This should make for a neat installation. But I want to show you what it looked like if we didn't. So here we go. Just want to keep all that stuff in a safe place. Bingo. Okay, so to get this PowerLink connector on, for this to line up across the back and the 2 connectors, the connector to the front was okay, but the connector on the back was too far back. So we loosened it, let it slide in and line up. Once it locks down, then we'll go back and tighten the screws to it. It was just out of position, from the factory out of position. Okay, now we're replacing the case fans. We're putting in the 2 front fans. So it was easier to turn this up so we could get this positioned and figure out where the wires go so we get it perfectly in line. When you change out these fans, be sure that when you pull them out, pull them both out, and take the top one and tuck it up under there. Now, we use the micro screwdriver because it's small enough that we can stick it in there and line those holes up. But it has to be tucked up into this front edge, right here. This has to be tucked up under this way for those holes to line up. We used a micro screwdriver to line up the holes. Also, you've got to watch the cables because they don't mount the way they did beforehand. They drop differently. So make sure my holes are lined up. Yep, good to go. Okay, we got our front fans in, connected to the motherboard. Put our dust panel back on the front. Okay, front panel's on. Okay, the drives that are going front, we'll mount those later. We just want to get this up and running. Okay, we've got everything mounted. What we want to do now is take a look and do a quick inventory, make sure we got everything covered. So when we power up, we're not doing any what ifs, gotchas, and trying to figure things out. Memory had plastic on them, we took that off. Video card had plastic shield on that, we took that off. We'll do a quick inventory. Processors installed, torque down. We have the thermal compound applied. Cooler installed. Memory, peeled off the labels. We're 4 channels, so we got 4 sticks installed. We got the 2 fans installed. In a little while, we're going to look at that with the endoscope so we can take a look at that and see how that all works and how the close tolerances are, how we can raise that up and how far and what it looks like. Cooler will just clear the top of the case, so we're good to go with that. We've got the boot drive NVMe installed underneath. Video cards installed. Our EVGA RTX 2080 Ti is installed. And we installed the power link coupling for it, so that'll look nice and neat. Our Superflower power supply is installed. Cables are installed and routed. We've got the rear case fan installed, 4-pin. We have the 2 front case fans installed, also 4-pin, Noctua 2 fans. I think we're ready now to do the smoke test. So I'm going to turn this around, make it easy for the cables to plug in and see what we've got. Plug in power. We'll plug in a keyboard and a mouse. And we're going to need video, so we will plug in HDMI. And I won't go through the DisplayPort converter to HDMI. We'll just go straight HDMI. And once we get something up on video, we'll show you on the screen. And we can plug the network in, but we don't need to right now. So what we're after is to see if we got a smoke test. So we'll turn the power button on, see if we got that plumbed right. Powering up. EVGA GeForce RTX 2080 Ti. Pretty cool. I heard it beep. Finally, something up on the computer screen. Fantastic. I got to tell you, that's the longest we've ever had a system sit and go through the process of looking at itself before it would finally post. Now we got something on the screen. Let's take a look. I'm stoked. Smoke test, so far so good. And into the BIOS. BIOS has been reset. Please reconfigure. Boot failure detected. Load optimized defaults, then boot. System has experienced a boot failure. Previous settings in BIOS may not be compatible. Well, we need to get into the BIOS so we can look and see what's going on. So we will load optimized defaults. We want to enter the BIOS, and we are in the BIOS. Now, this is something that we'll show you later how we do this stuff getting into the BIOS. Just suffice to say, anything coming out of HDMI, we take into a converter. This is going into a decimator NVHX converter. We convert from HDMI to SDI. We go into the video switch. I can change signals. I can change inputs, and that's why you can see what we're seeing. I'll give a picture of that in another video. So now we're going to go into the BIOS and take a look. So this is a Gigabyte TRX40 Designare for the Threadripper 3. Shows the BIOS F2, shows the CPU AMD Ryzen Threadripper 3970 32 core, and shows the RAM right now 128 gigs. Remember, we're going to fill this thing up with RAM. Even though we're only showing 128 gigs, that's a lot of RAM. That's the most RAM we've ever had in a machine. We're going to put a full 256 gigs of RAM in here once we get this fully populated. The purpose of this was the smoke test to get this up and running. It runs. Now what we need to do is go ahead and get the operating system installed, make sure that's smooth. Then we'll go back through the process of adding the RAM. Then we'll go through the process of doing the cards in here. So I hope you enjoyed it at this point. We've got a whole lot more to do. I hope you'll stay with us, and I want to thank you for joining us. But this is all about the smoke test and getting a Threadripper 3 up and running. Success. Believe me, if we can build one, you can too. Sometimes we all just need a little bit of help. But we've done the basics, so now we want to get the operating system installed, and then we'll build on that because we got to make sure that everything is good. And this is part of the test. But this first, what we always call the smoke test, is to make sure it'll, 1, power up, and 2, when it does power up, that everything's okay. But I got to tell you, this is the longest I've ever seen a system take to do a self-diagnostic and interrogate itself to finally boot up. Kind of had me scratching my head because I kept looking, seeing error codes as it kept flipping back and forth. But it finally came up. it took a while. So be patient if this is your first one to build. So now in this next video, I think we'll get the operating system installed. Hope you'll stay with us.